Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast.
Hey, very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy. I'm joined this week by a jubilant Limerick Kieran Collins, pretty optimistic Ruairi Walsh from Clare, and James Mulcare, who maybe run the rule over Cork last weekend. Lads, how are things?
Good, Mark.
Very good, Mark, yeah.
Very good. Yeah, lads, before we start here, I need to send our condolences to the family of Kate Moran here in Galway. I know, based up in Galway, this tragedy has really hit home to an awful lot of parishes here. Kate Moran tragically lost her life in a hurling match. Our thoughts and prayers with Kate Moran's family, TJ Brennan, boyfriend, wide circle of friends, Athenry, Ardrahan, and also Galway Camogie. Rest in peace. So after that, let's kind of maybe move on. Last weekend, start of the hurling championship games. We'll review round 1 in Munster and Leinster, and also have a look at round 2 with some fascinating ties on show. Maybe we can start with Munster first, and maybe we'll get Kieran in with you first. I know we had a few question marks over Limerick going into this championship, but a 225 to 117 win over Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Easter Sunday fairly spelled a few rumours and doubts in terms of the performance here of this team.
Yeah, I suppose, look, ourselves, we were not knowing what we were going to face and what Limerick team we're going to line out. I suppose there was a lot of rumours coming into last weekend regarding certain injuries. Okay, Flanagan did lose out, but a strong team lined out with the curveball thrown with Hayes going to the full forward line. You know, so I think he, especially in the first half, he caused pandemonium up there. Like, you know, he was just running at him. A bit quieter maybe in the second half, but at times it looked like they didn't know how to deal with him. I suppose looking back, why did we even doubt him at all? You know, if you look back on last year, I suppose they timed the run to championship to perfection, and it looks like they were similar story this year. You know, 220 from play. The work rate, the intensity, you know, the tackling, the like hustling in 2s and 3s, you know, they just literally bully Cork all over the field. And you know, some notable players missing like Flanagan and Casey, but it still didn't seem to make a difference. It was just the same performance that we've seen in last year's All-Ireland final and against Tipperary in the second half and Munster final last year. And I think they've really set down a marker for the year.
Perfect. James Mulcare, we might bring you in here, proud Cork man. What were your thoughts? I mean, after 16 seconds, what a phenomenal start with Shane Kingston's goal. You went 1-2 to no score up. What's been the feeling down in Cork since probably the 5th minute on?
Absolutely abysmal from Cork, to be honest with you. We saw the team sheet the night before. I had some reservations when I saw the team sheet, but like I think we flagged it well in advance in terms of the problems down the centre of the Cork had. But you're kind of hoping really that they would go out and they'd front up and match Limerick's work rate. But unfortunately, what we got, and like you spoke there, Kieran, about Limerick's work rate, we got the opposite from Cork. There was absolutely no work rate at all for them on the day. I thought the forwards in particularly were very static, no movement at all out there. Maybe the only one you could say that had a bit of work rate about him was Robbie O'Flynn. They conceded the puck outs to Limerick, and like at times they just let them saunter up the field without laying a glove on them. Puck out strategy all over the shop, just like almost blind insistence and overplaying it at the back. You know, they weren't looking to play it forward, dithering on the ball. Anytime the defender got the ball, like they were looking backwards to Collins the whole time. And on a couple of occasions, like when they laid it back to Collins, he then laid it back and it came back to him again. And he was even gesturing to the backs, like, what are you doing? Like the frustration in the crowd, particularly after the second goal, they were still persistent with it. It was just, it was awful from a Cork point of view. And what they were like, you know, and a lot of the time as well, even when they were moving it, was some of the passing was kind of high loopy stuff. So even if a man was running onto the ball, they had to kind of stretch to get it, which kind of killed their momentum anyway. And all this did, like, I thought Limerick actually started off sluggishly enough, but Cork's kind of just are messing around at the back. It just invited Limerick on them, and it gave them a platform to kind of settle and get into the game. And once they did, they completely took over, and it was like it was men against boys. And you too many times Cork players were taking it into the tackle with Limerick, and they were getting swarmed up. I can't remember any ruck that Cork emerged from. The support player was really, really poor. Anytime a player was taken into contact with Limerick, there was 2 or 3 Limerick lads around him, and no Cork player offered as an outball. And they seem to be marking space at times. Obviously we have flagged. I think Coleman is an issue there at 6, and he lacks defensive awareness. But that first goal was abysmal. Like you had Cahalane and Coleman over on Hayes, and Cahalane was really poor to get caught. But Coleman, like, the defensive awareness there should be that you should be, you're going towards your goal, is like, that's where the danger point is. And both of them got turned the wrong way. And I understand that there should have been another player coming back to cover anyway, because Hayes ran through completely unopposed. But you've 2 men there. You're thinking, if you're another back, if you're Melrick, or if you're Ruairi Hayes, you're looking there thinking, you've 2 men on him. Both men aren't going to get caught with, like, it was really, 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 really poor. The second goal, I don't know what to say about the second goal. Like, that was just absolutely shocking. There was, like, it all started off with a hospital pass from Coleman. They kind of got away with it, and the 2 or 3 chances to clear, they didn't. Took it, same as most of the other kind of scores in the first half, took it into contact. Limerick turned them over and got the score. I think like 216 out of Limerick's 225 were from turnovers, which says it all really in terms of work rate from Limerick and the lack of work rate from Cork. It was just, from a Cork point of view, it was just shocking, really, to be honest with you.
Rory, might get you in here as a neutral viewer from a Clare perspective. What were your thoughts on the game? Because in fairness to Cork, there were 4 points down at the break. There was a key save from Ricky Quaid at the start of the second half, but after Limerick kind of re-established the platform again. But what were your general feelings on the game? Any worries here for Limerick defensively that you could see here from that Cork performance?
No, look, it was, I suppose, the way Cork opened Limerick from the throw-in was worrying, and you were kind of thinking, is this going to happen 3 or 4 times during the game? Is there a deficiency here? But I think, like, that, apart from second half as well, started second half and they went through and the save was made, that was kind of it. Like, and just being at the game and seeing it, like, up close, the way the Limerick forwards compared to the Cork forwards, it was chalk and cheese. It was like a different sport, actually. The way they hassled and harried the Cork players, gave them no time to, like, look up, pick out a pass. And the Cork forward line at the other end weren't really helping their backside either, by just, like, sometimes they were just standing next to the man rather than, like, there was no diagonal runs or another thing. Like, a lot of the Cork players were kind of seemed to be, just making a straight line run away from the guy with the ball, which is a very difficult pass, Look, and I think something we spoke about last week was, if Cork learned from the league final, we'd seen how they hadn't really learned, Kingston hadn't learned from the All-Ireland final last year. We were kind of thinking maybe now they finally, like, are going to change the system, and we were wondering, are they too far gone down the line? And yeah, they stuck with it, and it was a hugely detrimental decision to, like, leave the backs the way they were, with Coleman playing in a 6th role that he's clearly not able to do. And which is a shame, because it's a waste, and like, you're wasting almost 2 players because you don't have a 6 or whatever that's doing the job that's needed to hold. And, like, comparing them to the way Hannon was playing at the other end, like, it was, again, they're both wearing the same number, but it was like 2 guys playing 2 different positions altogether. And then but you're also losing then Coleman somewhere else in the field where he could actually pick up a few scores, do some damage. But again, like, something we spoke last week was how O'Donoghue, for Stephen Bennett's goal, stayed with his man. And if you watch, we spoke there about how Coleman got sucked in there when Kyle Hayes turned for the first goal. But watch O'Donoghue again, he stands next to Aaron Gillane and doesn't leave him. At least come and force the pass. Like, the hand pass can go wrong. It gives the goalkeeper a chance to come out and swarm Gillane maybe, but make Hayes, take that pass rather than coming through. I know then you're saying 3-on-1, but, like, he's already beaten the 2 boys and he's heading straight for goal. So again, Sean O'Donoghue, like, I thought should have came across there and at least, force that extra pass. Can go wrong. So there are a couple of things I obviously hadn't been kind of, maybe highlighted to the defenders from the Waterford game. But yeah, it was just like Limerick were awesome. And the one thing I'd say, you were talking about any worries from a defensive point of view. It's just the forwards again, like Kyle Hayes. The Limerick team has names now. Kyle Hayes hasn't made he limped off with a hamstring strain. He's not back for the Waterford game. Just wondering about depth in the forward line. Pat Ryan came on, looks got an unbelievable score. Oisin O'Reilly looked like when he came on, but these boys were started during the league, and none of them really put up their hand as starters during the league. So yeah, Conor Boylan is coming in at 14, which is kind of an unusual one. Going for, I suppose, physically similar to Hayes, kind of if they want to keep with the way they've been training, maybe with a big man at full forward. But it's kind of one we didn't. I suppose if we were all to guess who was going to come in, we probably would have said Cathal O'Neill. But that's the one thing I would think about Limerick. Maybe depth up front now with injuries starting to mount. Could be a slight issue, like.
So I think Kieran might loop you in there. I mean,
yeah,
as Rory said, team news has been announced. Conor Boylan, what's your reaction?
Yeah, it's really wasn't expected, but I suppose they're looking for the big man inside. I suppose more so. Looking at that as well, I think Mulcare needs a big game. I don't think he was at his very best the last day. Doing a lot of work off the ball and doing a lot of donkey work, but there is, you're missing Kyle Hayes, Shamie Flanagan, Peter Casey, like three all-star players, in your forward line. That's big boots to fill. But just going back to Cork, like I think a lot of people think, we'll take Coleman out and put in a proper six. It's going to solve the problem. It's not. Like defensively, Cork are weak. It's like going for goal is their number one priority, and defending is their second priority. Like Tim O'Mahony for Kyle Hayes' goal does not burst the gut to get back and block off, block the space or try and get back and help out at all. Very fluidically was getting back, very loose. I don't think like Coleman. Yes, he's not a six, but there's more issues in that Cork defensive unit than the wrong man being a six. But I think for Cork, it's on the bench. Like Downey came in as a temporary sub it was a Donoghue went off blood sub 8 or 10 minutes. But that's 2 games in a row where they were getting destroyed and they made no change. Like there was no plan B there. So like, is it a case this is it for them? There's no one on the bench that could come on and change it up. Like it was just they've stuck with the same 6 guys for the last 2 games.
I think they do have options there, but it's just that the management team just seem this is going to be the sort they die on, really, to be honest with you. They just seem so entrenched in the position now that like the warning signs have been there for a long way out. Like, but you're right. Like they don't seem to be learning. It just seems to be that they have their plan A and that's it. And if plan A doesn't work, it's still plan A. There's no doesn't seem to be any desire to change things up. And you're right in what you're saying about O'Mahony as well. Is that like you almost have 2 kind of forwards there playing in the back line there with Coleman and O'Mahony, and like you think they should change it for the Clare game, but again, I'm not sure if they will or not. I think they're stuck in this. They seem to be stuck to this game plan and stuck to this square pegs and round holes, and I don't see them changing it.
Yeah, but if you look, Rory mentioned there Pat Ryan's point. It was obviously a great point, but you 2 Cork players on him, and Pat Ryan stumbled. He still had time to get up and get a shot away, and there wasn't a glove laid on him. But if that was the other way around, where you had a Cork forward with 2 Limerick defenders, they'd have him wrapped up. Don't have to foul him, but hold him up, and chances are he would have been penalised for overcarrying. But there was just no intensity to the tackling. It's just that there was 2 guys there on Pat Ryan, but just like they followed him. Like there was no intent to try and disrupt him or get the ball off him, and it was the same for Kyle Hayes. It was just like they were chasing him. They were chasing him all day, and that's going to take work. That's a system error. This isn't something they can fix by personnel change. This is a system error for Cork.
Indeed. I suppose plenty of food for thought for Cork on the bye week here. And again, Limerick will proceed on to TUS Gaelic grounds with remote watering tie against Waterford. And maybe we can get to that one here, guys. We kind of feared about Tipperary coming into this Munster Senior Hurling Championship, but I think it'd be fair to say, Rory, that they did quit themselves very well in Walsh Park on Sunday, and maybe if they had a bit more composure from the 63rd, 65th minute, they may have pulled up the upset here.
Yeah, and Waterford got every start a bit like Cork against Limerick. Went up 4 points to no score and looked to be, really on song, and there seemed to be real alarm bells for Tipperary. But the first goal settled Tipperary, and that kind of brought them into it and gave a bit of composure to the debutants, and like they have tons of hurling, as we could see. So we were kind of saying, okay, 6 or 7 debutants, but they're all crisp strikers of the ball, use possession really well, and it was just that spell after half time that really killed them. Like there was going to be a reaction from Waterford, like the substitutes that came in. Jamie Byrne looked to be flying, as did Austin Gleeson, and it that spell after half time was really like, I know you can't say in a game, let's remove 5 minutes or whatever from a game because it is a 70-minute game. But if you were to watch that game without watching the 5 minutes, Tipperary probably a better team. And they're now full of hope going into the Clare match. I was kind of hoping to be the other way around, that they'd be coming in demoralised, but a lot of hope in Tipperary now going into this game in Thurles, which is going to be a huge one this week. And Waterford as well. I think Liam Cahill still thinks Waterford will have a bit of a point to prove now against Limerick. They were being talked up big time. Derek McGrath especially couldn't but talk them up, which for the last month he's been just blowing about how they're the team to beat. But now they have to put up or shut up at the weekend, because coming to the Gaelic Grounds, if they can't go toe to toe with Limerick now, are they really going to be contenders for an All-Ireland later on in the year?
But Roy, you could look at that a couple of ways. I think I've actually been working down in Waterford for the last 3 days, and the amount of houses that have bunted and flags up, there's hype in the county, and I've been talking to a few guys, and they're cocky, they're confident. We're going to beat Limerick, we're going to win the All-Ireland this year, but for the team, they have yet to do it in the last couple of years, and they've been destroyed basically. 2 11-point defeats, in the All-Ireland final and the semi-final last year.
And so I think Munster quarter-final last year against Clare, they never showed up at all in Thurles.
Yeah. So but even but if they don't lose, if they beat Limerick Saturday night, I think the hype machine is just going to take off completely. I actually think for Waterford, they will actually do no harm, maybe in the long run, if they're to just lose by a point or two and just realise, we're in touching distance with these guys,
Mm-hmm.
But I think if they win Saturday night, or if they win a Munster final against Limerick, if that what pans out to be, that hype machine will be very hard to wrap up players from. If you can do it for a week or two before an Ireland final, but you're talking from end of April to the middle of July, a lot of thoughts get into players' heads in that time frame. So I think it wouldn't be the end of the world for Waterford to lose, as long as it wasn't a big heavy defeat. But I think the same for Limerick. I think if Limerick were to lose Saturday night, I don't think it would define our Limerick season either. I think it would be up to Waterford then, to back up the performance. But I think it would be the outside noise for Waterford would be the biggest contention for them.
They're riding the crested wave. They're riding the crested wave at the moment on the back of Ballygunner League, and then you're trying to bridge that gap between 1959. There's no way that you can dampen the expectations. It's going to be that way no matter what. That's why I actually think the result on Sunday and the way the game went was actually nice. Will suit Cahill nicely, because I fully expected Waterford, to be honest with you, to blow Tip away. I was expecting 8, 9, 10, 11-point win, and they came away in a tough battle. Got through it, and they got Barron came on, Gleeson came on a half. That was another thing as well from Cahill, is he's made his statement now to Gleeson. He didn't contest the red card, and didn't start in the last day against Tip. Went with he went with what he had in the league, and they still came away with the win. And I think ideal result for Cahill coming into Saturday, because it will dampen things down in the squad anyway. He's got plenty to work on to keep their feet grounded. So I think a good result for them.
But this will be the litmus test, because if you look back, the league semi-final and final, okay, they destroyed Wexford. League final, they destroyed Cork. but the form of them teams has continued. Like Wexford were bad against Galway the weekend, and we're lucky to come away with a draw, and Cork were bad against Limerick. So, how good are Waterford actually? You know, before the league final and maybe just after, everyone thought, right, Waterford have just destroyed possibly the third best team in the country. You know, and so I think Saturday night will actually tell, have they closed that gap, or is there still a void between the two? And
a couple of people said to me during the week, the bench Waterford have is incredible, but like they had to use them at half time because the starting team weren't so hot. Like Daly had to come off at half time, Montgomery hadn't pucked the ball in the first half, he'd come off at half time as well. So like maybe the bench was so strong because he got the starting team selection wrong. He read too much into league form rather than kind of going with, let's say, Jamie Byrne, who apart from a couple of times he's come up against Will O'Donoghue, who has like dominated midfield in Munster Championship games. And I suppose like the boys have made the point of give us back our starting jersey. But it will look. I agree. The hype is still there amongst the fans. But James, you're probably right saying that it probably dampened amongst the team now. And Liam Cahill can say he thought you were this, he thought you were that. You're not. You got to continue to work hard, or you're going over. Like that's probably the message that was given to them this week.
And it was fairly no better boy as well than Cahill to keep things in check as well. So he seems like a very shrewd operator on the line. So go on, sorry, Kieran.
Sorry, James. No, it was very bullish of him not to start Ozzy as well. Yeah. Like it was it could have been a gamble. Obviously they needed to bring him on at half time. But I think he thought they might have been better themselves.
Mm-hmm. And Mark Keogh for Tipperary, actually, he looked a real handful, and 2 goals well taken, could have actually caused a bit of consternation in there as well. Like with other. There was a couple of goal mouth scrambles that happened, and he was at the centre of it, but where they could have got another goal. But he's like just looking. He'll be up against Conor Cleary, another big physical player at the weekend. That'll be an interesting tussle. And if Cleary can keep Keogh quiet and stop him putting up the green flag, like it'll be a huge boost for Clare's chances the weekend.
And McGrath caused the Burka problems as well for periods, So I mean, they do have things that they can certainly work on for protect, but I think it should be a cracker. I'm looking forward to that one.
There was a point in the first half where Tipperary's, you could see, like, without a team that were rattled, Tip had completely rattled Waterford. You had the Burka hand passing it to Noel McGrath for a point at one stage. Like sometimes it can happen where a team like are kind of caught cold, like a heavyweight punch or caught cold, and they're rattled, and because Tipperary had nothing to lose in a way, they had shackles off, they were hurling really well, and Waterford were kind of thinking, what's happening here?
I think Ford had a chance as well for had he put that away, they could have been in right trouble. It was 4 at half time, and say on the balance of play, Tip could have been 7 or 8 ahead, and had they been 7 or 8 ahead, might have been a different story altogether,
But I think Waterford would possibly be better outside of Welsh Park. Once they get more space, like Limerick, like once they get to Croke Park or Park Grieve, Thurles having that more space will probably suit their game, I think.
It definitely looked inhibited, didn't I? Waterford, I think the movement, top Tip were able to well contain them, but I have an awful lot of relations from Tipperary guys, and I hate to bring up the officials here again, but Johnny Murphy and the officiating here, and leading up to Tommy Dunn's red card, and the aftermath of this looks as if there's a proposed 3-month ban for Tommy Dunn here. I think given the Mikey Kiley pull in the air, that seemed to really stirk an awful lot of Tipperary management. There had been a succession of frees here. I can remember the Craig Morgan free for the second Stephen Bennett free. That looked fairly harmless. But I think there's a catalogue of instances here that Tommy Dunn went to Johnny Murphy on, and yellow card suddenly turned red, which now has suddenly turned into a 3-month ban. I don't know in terms of the Tipperary effect from that, but definitely the 10-15 minutes after half time, it seemed to rattle Tip an awful lot in terms of concession of those 2 quick goals. But I suppose Tommy Dunn being not on the sideline for Tipperary on Sunday, that's a huge loss for Rory going into that Clare game.
It is, and 3 months, like he's basically out for the championship if it's a 3-month ban. And look, the only thing he did it very publicly. It was right in the middle of the pitch. Cameras are on live, and we know the GA are gone completely paranoid now about officials on pitch. I was on the sideline even at a minor match during the week, and Renan gave water to the wing back, and I was fourth official up and told me, you cannot go on with water, he has to come to you. And you're going to get break and play. What harm is running on with a bit of water? But they're gone so paranoid over it. So to see a member of management kind of, chastise a referee while in the middle of the pitch. Look, it was silly out of Tommy Dunn. Like, there probably was a better time to do that quietly, maybe as he's coming out from the tunnel, or but not cameras on middle of the pitch where everyone can see you. What I thought was worse, like the Mikey Kiley one, like if you watch it, like he is watching the ball all the way, and the tip player does step across him. It looks more like an unfortunate. I don't think there's any intent.
No malice there.
Yeah. No, there was no intent.
The bigger one was the throw for the, like, they're blowing hand passes, and this was the most blatant throw across for the second goal, wasn't it? It was the second one where he threw it across the square. That had to be kind of called. That was the big one for me, like, because we're talking about how they're so strict on hand passing, and there we have one that leads to a goal and it's not pulled, like. So I think Tip, genuinely had grievances there.
But I actually heard Derek McGrath. He was discussing the hand passing rule, and he's very much against them blowing for the hand passes. Like, but you can't be throwing the ball around. I mean, like, it is a skill in the game, and there is an emphasis on the player to show that the bit of distance between, that that you are making a proper pass. You can't be on the ref the whole time. Like, there was an onus there on the player to accentuate the movement, and you can't, like Derek McGrath saying that that he's coaching teams at the moment, and I think Daly was asking him, saying, "Are you blowing up for it?" He said no, because we want to transition the ball quickly, and it might look like a throw, but a throw is a throw. You have to be calling it.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I think about it is, a lot of the time a player is running with his back to the ref, and the ref can't actually see the hand pass, so it's a hard one to officiate in.
I think the directive they've been given is, if there's any doubt, award a free.
Yeah,
so there's no clear cut. But I think aside, definitely it's a skill of the game. But I think an issue they need to look at as well is steps. Curran, he must have taken 8 or 10 steps before the pass was given for the goal. So I think it's a bigger issue than potentially the hand pass.
In Wexford, Cloncannon took a lot of steps.
Yeah. I think every game you can pick out, and even you see a player maybe running on the wing and he's motioning to strike, but he's taken 10-12 steps, before he strikes the ball. I think that's something that maybe definitely should be looked at. Maybe not this year, but focus in on the hand pass, and maybe next year on steps, because I think that's there are two rules which are very hard to officiate. But I think, I suppose you highlight an area, and I suppose it does. You can see players now who are actually over accentuating the pass, and and making it known that it is a proper hand pass. So I suppose highlighting the rule is no harm if as long as they're consistent with it is the problem.
But like, for a defensive point of view, a defender forces his man to overcarry, and like, he should be rewarded with the free. It's good defending to force the steps, and then you can't get the ball off a guy if he takes 10 steps and runs past you at pace. Like, what can you do apart from fouling him? So if you force him to overcarry, you should be rewarded for it. It's I know there's letting the game flow, but at the same time there's rules, and everyone knows you might get away with 5-6 steps. It's marginal, but when you see 8-9 steps and goals being scored from them, like, that's where I think refs really should come in there.
I think I counted 11 for the Galway goal. About that, which is just ridiculous, really. But it's the consistency, as you said, Kieran. That's what you want from refs.
Mm-hmm. Thank God Johnny Murphy's from Limerick anyway, Mark. That's all I can say.
Indeed. Now, in fairness, now to other officiators, have seen the Irish Examiner on Monday. I mean, all in support, and I think there were marginal calls, but I think there's probably a back story to that in terms of Lockmore Castellini going down to Walsh Park, and I think some of the officiating down there left an awful lot to be desired from a Lockmore Castellini perspective, and maybe that's the reason why John McGrath was kept on the bench for so long. I mean, I think for Tipperary, they've likes of Dan McCormick to come in, John McGrath to come in. I think the debutants did very well as well, like Jason Quigley, Dylan Quirk, Conor Bowe, but I think Conor Bowe is very doubtful. Got a nasty hand injury in that opening period. So, but I think for Bonner, I think a very useful performance from the team. But I suppose we can get to the Clare tip preview in due course. I suppose we can switch to Leinster here, guys. Getting a lengthy one here. But Wexford Galway in Chadwick's Wexford Park, 119 each. I suppose, Kieran, being based in Wexford, what's been the immediate reaction to the performance first off, and to get the draw second?
I suppose there's no doubt that they stole a draw, but I think it was more so, it was Galway's game to close out, and they didn't do it. They were 118 to 15 points with 8 minutes to go. I think we've questioned it a few times over the last few pods that, the battle in Galway, and, how huge is it that Canning is now gone, and like if you'd imagine, if Canning was there, would this have happened? Conor Whelan was going to have to feel injured, so like there was no real leaders up there for Galway, And from Wexford point of view, I think Chin came on. To be fair, shows how good he is. He changed the game. 5 points and whatever, a few minutes he was on for and from frees. That last free, was huge. Like for a guy who has very little hurling done, he's only 4 or 5 weeks back training, and 10 minutes. He got 10 minutes in the league, and now this, and by all accounts, it's as good as they're going to get out of him because he's nursing a hamstring injury, and he doesn't have a full championship in him. So I think they're kind of wrap him up as best they can. Rory O'Connor. It's kind of like Wexford had their best games in the league. I look back at the Waterford game, he was really struggling. Same again on Saturday, kind of a shadow of what he had been in the league games. Conor McDonald had a very good game, 1-2, and it was just, but there's an issue with Wexford where the forwards are struggling to get good ball in. And, I think if they had gone back to the way they played in the league and, getting the ball in, something needs to change because they're being starved of good ball in there, and they're basically living off scraps. Looking at Galway, I think Moran had a great game, and I kind of really been a fan of his for the last few games. I think he's been superb, and it'll be a tough ask to go into. You'd imagine Whelan's going to miss a game or two or a few, or whatever it is with the hamstring, how bad it is. And he's going to be a huge task. I think the whole game reverts around him. And it's it was probably a poor game, but it was Galway's game to close out, and they didn't do it.
Exactly. Rory, might get you in here as well to be a fly on the wall in that Galway dressing room at full time with Henry Shefflin in there. I think he does now see the task that's ahead of him in terms of Galway closing out games, but what was your general feelings of Galway, particularly in that second half? I think the last quarter was that they seemed to be reduced to the attacking force, and really were kind of made to hang on there for the last 10 minutes.
Well, even the first half, they were so wasteful. They could have been 12 points up at half time easily. So when they were, Wexford were always going to, have a spell, and we often associate Wexford with kind of these late gung-ho comebacks. And you just had to kind of, they were completely on top, they needed to put them away, and they didn't. Kept them in it, and then shot themselves in the foot at the end. And Conor Whelan's going off was massive. Like he was like Wexford, a big man at the back with Ryan and O'Hanlon, and just having a guy up there who can mix it with them and hold the man off and win dirty ball. And when he went off, they were completely lacking that in the forward line. Again, I liked speaking of positives for Galway, Jack Grealish, cornerback, did a great job, Rory O'Connor, and it's kind of you want cornerbacks to be on the edge, and he's a guy who's playing right on the edge of of what legal, what isn't, and I'm sure Henry Shefflin was kind of completely delighted with that performance, and it's kind of a guy you can now put on a talisman of where like Dublin, if I suppose Fergal Whiteley or something like that, who we might see as the biggest threat. If Burke goes into full forward line, maybe he might pick him up. But it's great to have a guy that you can say, do you know what? If you mark Rory O'Connor, he's probably going to, mark any of the top guys. And well, look, it's back to the drawing board in a way for them. It must have felt like a defeat coming out, and they are lucky they have Westmeath coming up next, because they'd have to pick themselves off the floor for a Kilkenny or even a Dublin, who they've had massive problems with in recent years, Galway. But the Westmeath game gives them a chance to settle things down a small bit again. It gives also Conor Whelan another chance to get fit. Jason Flynn back training gives him more time as well. Because if anything, at the very end, that's where they looked light up front at the end when as you said earlier, when Whelan went, just like they were David Burke, Johnny Cohen, they were bringing in, but they're not forwards. They needed a good forward to come in there. Cause a bit like Wexford, if they had somebody like a Lee Chin to come in, anyone at all, just stand up and win a ball. But must feel like a crushing defeat in one way. But at the same time, I suppose they're probably thinking could have been worse. If they had lost the game, it would have been, it would have put them right, up against it as well. They'll probably see themselves still getting through, but now the games against Westmeath and Laois are going to be important in terms of score difference as well, especially with a draw. So it does make the championship very interesting. And if there's another draw this weekend, let's say Wexford and Dublin, then that completely throws cat amongst divisions again. So
absolutely, Rory. Maybe James will get you in here as well. I hit and start picking here again. But this Conor Cooney free reversal. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was harsh, to be honest with you, and a critical moment as well in the game. I think they highlighted in the Sunday game was it where for Chin's free he actually took about 3 seconds longer. I didn't agree with the call at all, to be honest. Thought it was harsh, but you can blame Galway for not closing out the game, but the reality of the situation is had that not been overturned, Wexford wouldn't have got anything out of that game. It was a critical moment in the game, as was actually when Cooney was through, when all he had to do was slip the pass through when the game was over as well. But yeah, I thought ref got it wrong for me, Mark.
I suppose as well from a Galway standpoint, I think more the disappointing part about that was the reaction of Galway straight from the restart. I mean, there was a second ball win from Wexford and then over the bar and then puts the game in knife edge. So I think from Galway locals' perspective, they've seen a few positives here, particularly with likes of Pádraig Mannion, Brian Concannon, Tom Monaghan. They know they're not the finished article by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it was that kind of fading away, particularly from mid-second half on. And I suppose, Kieran, you've alluded to, that talisman Joe Canning would have probably stepped up, hit a vital point or two just to kind of keep the scoreboard ticking over. But it just seemed to be that the Wexford crowd seemed to get more and more into this match as Wexford were kind of getting in there. But I think it might raise a bit of a question here defensively. The goalkeeping, the puck-out strategy, guys, from Galway, I just didn't understand it, didn't figure it out. Éanna Murphy just literally hitting long majority of the time. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of change in tack here from Shefflin and the management going forward, because it's all well and good to drop ball in for the likes of Whelan, or Cooney, Joseph Cooney, big units, but it has to be a bit of variation to the goalkeeping puck-out distribution, wouldn't you say, Rory?
Yeah, look, as we saw even with Cork, where puck-outs were, they were forced to go short in a way, and you're kind of thinking maybe if they kind of went long a bit more because they weren't able to play the ball out through the Limerick lines, Galway probably should have went the other way and maybe forced Wexford onto them and tried to play the ball out. Maybe it's something that's like Henry and them aren't confident yet in that Galway's ability to play the ball out through the lines. But yeah, look, when your puck-out strategy becomes predictable, teams at this level are able to kind of, adjust, and so when they see Galway going long, they're just going to get lots of men around the ball, Wexford, where the ball is breaking, and it's something that you have to vary things. Can't make it predictable for your opponents, and it's something I suppose that they'll look at, and I presume Westmeath in a way gives them a chance to maybe learn from that game and adapt things before they meet Kilkenny the week after. So, as I said, it's a blessing for Galway that they're not going straight into Kilkenny and that they have that game in between, I think.
Do we know how bad Whelan's hamstring injury is? Because I think that's critical for Galway. If he's out, they're in serious trouble, I think. They pretty much ruddered this after he went off and kind of fell about. You're looking there at the likes of, I'm kind of thinking Evan Nyland might be one of those guys that stepped up to the plate this year, but he didn't offer anything. And if Whelan's out, they'll get over Westmeath. They should get over Westmeath. If Whelan's out for the Kilkenny game, they could be in a bit of bother there. You lose that, and you're it's all bets are off then in terms of Dublin might fancy their chance. It's just I think Whelan's massive.
Well, no respect to Westmeath, but I think Whelan will be shut down for this weekend. I think they should have more than enough. I mean, Galway's record against Westmeath in recent meetings has been pretty impressive. So I think you may see maybe one or two French players, maybe like Donal O'Shea, maybe coming in, making an impact as well. So I don't expect to see Whelan. And I think the Kilkenny game round 3, that might be a little bit too soon for him, to be fair. But again, there's nothing really coming out from the Galway kind of camp here. It had been very quiet leading up to the Wexford game, unbelievably quiet. You maybe have heard a rumour or two, but nothing really emanated from the camp. So it's a fairly tight camp at the moment. So we won't really know much about Whelan until definitely the Kilkenny game in round 3.
Like, they look concerned when he was going off, so that would lead me to think that it could be, it maybe, he might be out longer term, but I suppose we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
But strangely, the physio seemed to, kind of send them back in for a few seconds, and then Whelan tried to jog, and
yeah,
I was kind of wondering, I was saying, because it looked like a hamstring pull straight away, and then the physio seemed to check it and give him a green light, and then immediately Whelan was turning saying, "No, I can't run here." So it looked pretty serious. Whereas Kyle Hayes' didn't look as severe. I know it's hard to judge us watching on TV, but it didn't look. He limped off, and then you had Whelan's did look more serious, and you're not replacing like for like with Whelan because they don't have another Conor Whelan. He's a one-off player, just that raw kind of aggression and ability to win high ball, low ball, dirty ball, and score as well with it, and pace. He does, and they don't have a like for like. If they're putting in Gavin Lee, a Leaving Cert student in there, and it looks for him I know the only way he's going to learn is kind of thrown in at the deep end in a way, but it looked like, it looked like kind of he didn't have any real impact when he did come in, and so is Sheffield going to go back for him again against Kilkenny? Probably not. I
suppose they're lucky enough, Galway, that it is Westmeath they have next, and it's not if it was Dublin next weekend, that could be interesting, But they do have that, they'll get over Westmeath, and then I suppose it's all focus for them then is on the Kilkenny game.
Yeah, absolutely, because maybe we can go to the other 2 games in Leinster, and I think last week I was very, trying to be optimistic for Laois and Westmeath, but my God, Laois ran Dublin incredibly close in Parnell Park. 122-15, Dublin winning, and I mean, take Donald Burke out of this side in Dublin right now, and I think Dublin could be in all sorts of trouble here. Kieran.
Yeah, but they probably were in control. I think it was there were 7 points up with 2 minutes to go in normal time. I think that 1-2 kind of closed it up and left them sweating a bit. But I think they had 18 wides as well, so they were getting the chances on goal. Yeah, Donald Burke was immense, 13 points, 6 from play. Players there, like Roland Hayes really disappointed me. I think he did a great club campaign last year, and he just hasn't brought that form to the Dublin team. At the start of the league, we were saying, Dublin were impressive, but as the league went on, they've ran out of steam. Not taken away from Laois, to give him a good battle, and how good is Roland, 1-2, and had a fair go at the last 3 as well, which could have won the game for him, but Dublin, they're a hard team to read. I think for them they lead everyone on form to come out of Leinster, and I think the weekend's game against Wexford will be their final, really, because I think the winner of that game is probably more likely the team who might progress.
Yeah, you were
exactly.
speaking about. Mark, you were speaking about Hayes not delivering. Keogh never scored, Eamon Dillon never scored, taken off. Sutcliffe never scored, taken off. That's half your forward line, gone. In a home game against Laois. And what was interesting, was bringing up Roland and going for goal, went from 7 points, 4 points. Suddenly they're back in it because Cork had a 21-yard free with 3 minutes left. They're down 9 points. And you're thinking Cork need a goal, and Horgan taps it over the bar. And you're kind of wondering if they're ever going to have any chance. There's 3 minutes of normal time left plus injury time. At least if they rattle the goal in, they have some chance. But fair play to Laois for actually going for the jugular, bringing up the keeper, getting the goal. And as you said, last puck of the game as well, 21-yard free as well, that just kind of got deflected out. They could have snuck it,
They could have snuck it, all right, but what Kieran was saying as well, Dublin had the amount of wides, 11 in the first half alone, and some of them were bad wides. So, yeah, they could have been caught at the end, but they were pulling away towards the end there. So I think maybe the 2-point defeat flattered Laois in the end. But Dublin aren't firing on all cylinders, so that is set up against Wexford for. Yeah, that should be because Wexford aren't playing brilliantly either. So you wouldn't say with confidence Dublin aren't great at the moment, but you wouldn't say that Wexford are you couldn't say Wexford will definitely beat Dublin at the weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. And that is what you were saying, Kieran. That's huge. Whoever loses that is pretty much done for them, isn't it?
I do think it's advantage to Wexford though, because like Wexford Park is such a hard place to go. I think Galway saw that. Galway were wasteful of chances, but there's a breeze comes off the coast there, and you won't see it on the TV screen. It's even on a calm day, it's a fair breeze. I think Galway kind of struggled to that, with the amount of wides they had, and I think Dublin, like, they'll really have to improve on their shot taking if they're going to have any chance of beating Wexford, especially with that wind as well.
Yeah, I think even Dublin has well the squad depth. I think he's been exposed. Liam Rush hasn't really featured all year. There's injuries to several other key players. Matty Kenny was quick to point that out. I suppose trying to deflect from it looked a nervy performance from Dublin. The wide count here, as you said, 18 wides, really kind of told the tale of the tape. They were a little bit, panicky in terms of shot selection, but there is a good injury list here, and I suppose Owen O'Connell back defensively. If anything happens to him defensively, I think they may be in a little bit of serious bother. So, I mean, maybe Matty Kenny trying to put the pressure on a little bit on Wexford, saying that Dublin are going down, maybe as kind of underdogs. I suppose we won't really believe that within the Dublin camp, but did think that there was a little bit of psychology there. But there are injuries there for Dublin to contend with. And I suppose we can get to Kilkenny as well. Now, kudos to Westmeath. They put up a lovely performance up until half-time. But classic Kilkenny, once they scented blood in the third quarter, 5:23 full-time score, and TJ Reid getting good game time. I suppose, Kieran, any thoughts there from Kilkenny? I suppose usual suspects were on the score sheet pretty prominently.
Shows Kilkenny have the advantage of being able to, I suppose, wind it up a little bit slower than other teams have had to. There was only 3 points in it after 45 minutes, and I think a combination of Westmeath giving their all in the first half and the legs starting to go, space started appearing, and Kilkenny they'll expose them. But I thought Killian Dye was very impressive. He had 14 points for Westmeath, so real nice hurler. But Walter Walsh, 1-2. He seems to have a bit of consistency going with him this year. The form is good going into the championship, and Pádraig Walsh as well. Like, every day he's been out centre forward, 4 or 5 points from play. So I think he's been immense. And obviously TJ's coming back in, and he'll get a little bit of game time against Laois. And for me, I still think Kilkenny are the team to beat Leinster.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, yeah. But like you said it there at the start, Mark. Fair play to Westmeath. I mean, they were 10 points to 6 up after 25 minutes, and really competitive until Billy Ryan's goal, and then the red card as well, and it all kind of fell apart then after that. But they were very competitive for long periods of the game. So you have to admire them.
Absolutely. Kudos there to Laois and Westmeath anyway. And I suppose we can get to the preview of round 2 here, guys. In Leinster, you have Wexford entertaining Dublin, Kilkenny entertaining Laois, and then Westmeath Dublin. I suppose, guys, predictions-wise on these games, maybe we start with yourself, Rory.
Yeah, I'd be thinking Galway, Kilkenny, obviously, there, and Wexford, Dublin. Yeah, I'd agree with Kieran that I just fancy Wexford with the home advantage and everything. But again, like Dublin will have no fear of them. They're going down there now, point to prove maybe after the Laois game. But look, I just hope, Joanne, I hope it's a belter and it's kind of a real drama in it. But I just have a feeling that Wexford may be that bit further along than Dublin, the team that promised so much early in the league. And let's not forget, Dublin looked like they were going flat out in the league as well. They really wanted to get to a league final, and but it didn't work out for them. And I just wonder sometimes, Parnell Park, does it suit them at the moment? Like, their best performance last year was against Galway and Croke Park, and I know this whole thing of small ground and ambush teams in Parnell Park, I don't think actually suits the way they play, and the kind of like the likes of Sutcliffe, real athletic players, and kind of hemmed in a bit in Parnell Park in a way. But yeah, look, they need a big performance, Dublin. Matty Kenny needs a big performance. It's time for him now to deliver. He's been there a few years now, and he can't keep going about injuries. He's had years to build up a bit of depth in the squad. But look, I just fancy Wexford maybe in a tight one.
Thanks. James?
Well, Kilkenny and Galway in the other two are right, and I think I'd probably agree with Rory and Kieran there, and that home advantage will probably swing it for Wexford for me as well. Dublin struggling at the moment, and they do seem to be running out of steam in terms of their squad, relying on the same players, and yeah, Wexford are shaded for me.
Yeah, and Kieran?
Yeah, Kilkenny, I think they'll ramp it up a little bit more than what we saw the weekend, and it'll be all eyes on Galway week 3. So Kilkenny, Galway, obviously, I think we'll see a big bounce back from Galway because I think players themselves will have a point to prove to Shefflin. A lot of players didn't perform, like St. Island and Mannion and players like that. So I think you'll see a pretty hefty score. And I think Wexford, home advantage is huge. They have players who maybe on a little bit more form, and they have a bit more of a bench in Dublin. So I think based on that, I'm gonna say Dublin. Sorry, Wexford.
They'll have more of a spring in their step as well. They didn't play brilliantly against Galway, but the fact that they came away with the draw, I think that set them up quite nicely. So I think they have a bit more momentum coming into it in Dublin.
Yeah, I'll probably go with you, Kieran, in terms of those predictions as well. I suppose moving on to Munster then. Rory, you've been waiting patiently. Talk about Clare. Probably 50 minutes in now at this stage into the podcast episode. What's your hopes for Sunday? To be fair, what's news coming out of the camp? Any kind of maybe left field selections that we should be thinking about here ahead of tip?
Yeah, Shane O'Donnell is going to start. Hasn't played, I think, in 16 months for Clare, somebody was saying, but he's concussion last year. Hasn't played championship in 16 months for Clare. But apparently he's a new Shane O'Donnell. Lord is going around a bulked up Shane O'Donnell, who a lot more physicality than he had. Played against Galway recently in a challenge game and meant to have done quite well. So like you could see Shane Meehan, who looks a real talent, full of pace, and just himself and Shane O'Donnell inside would be a real handful, like for the tip backs. Just if we can get ball into them would be the question. And maybe Ian Galvin or somebody then playing the full forward role. So there's a lot of optimism about them. Like there hasn't been a word. You're talking about the Galway camp being tight-lipped, not a word about Clare. Like the backs, as we said, a very worrying start to the league, and they seem to just kind of tighten things up as it went along. Dermot Ryan is back fit now as well. He didn't play against Limerick, remember, so he might actually, I don't know, will they go at the half-back line? McInerney, John Conlon and Jack Brown did quite well against Limerick, and it's probably Clare's best line that day, so maybe Dermot Ryan might slot in midfield. He can really play from half-forward line back to half-back line, so maybe it's one position he hasn't really played for Clare yet is midfield, so he could slot in there. Like we have a few long-term injuries. Aidan McCarthy, Aaron Shanahan is injured as well. He's out for this game with an ankle injury. So I don't think he's going to make it to 24. And Mark Rogers is probably out for the whole championship as well. So they are losses. But the only place I'd say we can kind of absorb losses in the forward line, because you're still going to feel the forward line. Cathal Malone, Tony Kelly, David Fitzgerald did okay centre forward there during the league. Will probably play. Then you still have Ian Galvin, Meehan.
Would Duggan start?
That's the question. Like it depends on how well he's gone in training since the league, because in the league he didn't look like the same Duggan that was there. It's a big break to take, 2 years missing, and the game has actually moved on a small bit for wing forwards. Like you look at Cathal Malone, he's like the modern wing forward, like the Gerard Hegarty type, getting back into the back line, driving forward at pace, taking scores from distance. And Duggan, I don't know, is he as dynamic as that? Is he going to get back into the full back line? We'll see, but maybe it could be, we're talking about left field, maybe Duggan in a full forward could be something, because he, as we know, he's extremely good in the air, a great finisher, and even then with his free taking might free Tony up a small bit, give Tony a bit less a bit less worry about with frees. The way Tony Kelly has been hitting the frees the last couple of years, you won't want to hand them over to Duggan either. But yeah, look, the optimism comes from the six forwards we can put out. It's a huge game. It's a massive game. If Clare win, I think we have a great chance of getting out. If we lose, we could actually go on, maybe lose all four in a way. It's that kind of pivotal game. Because going into the Cork game then next, they lose it, then they have Limerick and Waterford to finish. So I think a win is massive if they can get a win here. It sets them up rightly to qualify.
Perfect. Yeah, Kieran and James, put your heads on the block there. In terms of tip Clare, who are you fancying? Kieran, start with you first.
On one hand, I'm thinking Tip have had the game. you know, and it'll be a spirited kind of, you know, easy for them to go training this week. I think, you know, after the performance they put in, you know, they were heavily written off all year, you know, and I suppose in a way they've nothing to lose coming into the championship. So, but then Clare, as you said, Roy, there's no word about them. I don't think Clare would fear Cork either going into the next game. You know, the whole Ed Sheeran saga and the game being on in Thurles, you know, it has to be motivation for him. And the way Cork played against Limerick, I think, you know, they wouldn't fear, you know, and they go at him. But I think this one's hard to call. Just because Tipperary have had the extra game and a good performance, I'm just going to tip just a shade, I think.
James, what do you think?
Yeah, very tight one to call. The flip side of that, Kieran, is that you know, Tipperary. You flagged that last week actually, where you said this. You know, Tipper, they're waiting in the long grass to ambush Waterford. They were sitting there nicely. Now they've had their game and they've effectively showed their hand. You know what I mean? So clearly they've had the week to assess it. I think it's very, very tough to call. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a draw, but I'm going to just side with Clare on this one.
Rory, probably an easy decision for you.
I'm thinking that we're going to get goals. I'm thinking Shane O'Donnell, Rogers, and Meehan inside there are going to be a huge handful. Just hoping delivery. I think we could, like, it could be kind of a game where you get 3-4 goals, and we probably will need that. Like at the other end, Noel McGrath, Jason Ford, kind of sharpshooters. Tip will always put up a certain, you know, a big score. It might be goals, and I just think we have goals in us now. Kelly, of course, as well, and Thurles. If he turns it on as well, it's again, Clare will have to score heavily because we don't have the best six backs in the championship, and I have a feeling that I think it's going to be one of those days where just the whole positivity now with players coming back, and like we're in a far better place now than we were at the start of the league, and also just the fact they've had a chance to watch Tipperary as well. I know you could say it's great to have a game under your belt, but you also an opportunity to kind of, you know, learn from what went on and see, can you find weaknesses and target that. Yeah, and I just think that I think we're going to
just say Clare.
Win. Yeah, Clare.
Clare kind of finished the league kind of well, and it's not like the league was, you know, that long ago. You know, like previous years, you have a long lead off between in the league and the championship. Now it's. I wouldn't think that the extra game is going to make that much of a difference. We'll see. I suppose we'll see at the weekend now. Like, but should be
James Owens is down to ref this, which is a complete. Can't believe it.
I was about to ask, what was your reaction to that, Rory, given last year?
It was a foul-mouthed tirade anyway when I saw he was down to ref. Like, I don't get what the GA are doing here, because if there's another controversial. Because this is 3 years in a row. If you remember, he sent off David McInerney against Laois, and to the bafflement of everyone. And he claimed he struck. No one saw the strike. There was no video evidence to exonerate him either. But so Clare had a bone to pick him over that. Then you had the ghost penalty last year, and so
third time lucky.
I'm just saying, if there's a third major incident goes against Clare this year, there'd be questions asked about that appointment. Like, you know,
hope you sent a Christmas card to James Owens last Christmas.
Out of all the referees in the country, to appoint him again for a Clare Tipperary game, I just thought was
still better than Johnny Murphy, though.
I would leave Johnny out of it now, to be fair.
Johnny Murphy referees the tip games.
James Owens wouldn't have a great reputation in club games in Wexford, so you know it's hard to see that he's even an inter-county referee. You know.
Yeah, we might move swiftly along before we get into trouble here. But Limerick Waterford, guys, on Saturday. What's your picks there on Saturday night? I think it'll be a classic. To be perfectly honest, I think there's not going to be much in it. Maybe a slight edge to Limerick, just purely because of the record of Waterford and Gaelic grounds is not the greatest. But I expect Waterford to really turn up and produce a performance. I think, like you, Kieran, mightn't be the worst idea, you know, to produce a performance, 2-3 point loss. Because literally, Waterford really have to beat Limerick 3 times, maybe, potentially, come the championship. So I'll go for Limerick. What about yourself, Kieran?
Yeah, I suppose if you look at Waterford's game, you know, running from deep, and you saw Limerick the way they stood up against Cork last week, and it was just a green wall, you know, and I think one player I think he's an unsung hero really in that Limerick team is Will O'Donoghue. The destruction he does in there, and he's had Jamie Barnes' number for the last couple of games. I think he completely took him out of the game. So if Barron does start, I think it's a huge matchup there. My one concern for Limerick is the full forward line. Now I know we can, a lot of our scores do come from out the field. I saw a stat today where 7 points of the 225 were from defenders from play. So we're not necessarily relying on scores from the full forward line, but I think just defensively, I think we stop Waterford's running game. Home advantage. Not going to go against them again. I'm going to say Limerick.
Okay. James?
We need this game to be what we hope it to be. If Limerick were to do what they did on Sunday to Waterford, we're kind of looking at a fairly damp squib of a Munster Championship then, aren't we? So we're hoping that Waterford turn up, hoping that Waterford put in a performance, and I think it's hard. I think it's hard to go against Limerick. I'd probably just go with Limerick to shade it alright on the back of hopefully Waterford turning up with a performance. But it wouldn't surprise me either if looking at the moment that we're looking at the championship, it's looking like league is a million miles off from all the form lines in the league are look like completely wrong. So hopefully Waterford turn up. That's all I'll be looking for is a good performance out of Waterford.
Absolutely. Rory?
Yeah, just the fact, like, we kind of know what we're going to get from Limerick, and there's still question marks. Can Waterford hit that level? They've shown glimpses of it. But yeah, look, we'll know where Waterford really stand at the weekend. And if Limerick do blow them out of it, as James said, could happen. It does look like, that is there anyone going to shove it up to Limerick this year? But if there is somebody, and like Waterford do seem to have that game, they kind of mirror Limerick in a way. Tyke de Burka back in there didn't have the best of first half last week, but grew into the game as it went on. Look there, and made a comment about their bench earlier, but they are definitely stronger than they were. Look, hopefully it'll be a ding dong battle, but look, we know more about Limerick and that we know what Limerick will produce, and Waterford is just, we actually don't know, is Waterford's best good enough to still beat Limerick? Just don't know that, whereas we know Limerick's best is good enough to beat Waterford, you know what I mean?
See, that's the thing. How has the gap closed? That I think we're all kind of, it's the same like Kenny were on top. You want it to be competitive, and you don't want a huge gap. One team hoovering things up. I know that obviously you guys do in Limerick, but you're just like after the All-Ireland last year, you would have said Limerick are miles better than everyone, and it's just the league. You're thinking, have they come back to the pack a bit and have the pack close the gap to them? And I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. And yeah, you really are just hoping that Waterford can put it up to them, and that it is the game that we hope it's going to be. Because if it's not, who do you see putting it up to Limerick for the remainder of the year? I don't see any team in Leinster. So it's Waterford really that's we're kind of relying on for it probably looking at it. It's probably going to be Limerick and Waterford in the Munster final, and depending how things go, probably could see that in the All-Ireland final too. So you want it to be competitive. You don't want it to be a blowout.
One interesting thing is that Waterford actually have a 2-week break after this game. So certain concern for management is player welfare and player recovery after games. So I think Waterford can allow themselves to really go at it, and it'll be a titanic battle or a hard game. They'll have time.
It's actually the ideal. It's actually the ideal setup for the Munster round robin is 2 games and then a 2-week break and then 2 games to finish off with. If you can get it like that way, it's perfect. Yeah.
And just as well, the way Limerick, the game Limerick played against Cork, the energy that takes out of a team to do that. Now it's mesmerising to watch it, and
6 days later, it's a quick turnaround. Yeah.
It's hard to keep repeating that, and it wouldn't be surprised if there is a game where Limerick do have a lull. And if there's one team they don't want to have a lull against, probably Waterford. So So look, it makes for an intriguing game at the weekend. Both games for different reasons.
I think it's a bigger game. It's a bigger game for Waterford than Limerick. Like Limerick have got the results last week, and they're they're not going to. I can't see them losing against Tip or Clare. So if they could afford to lose this game, all right. If they're still probably going to come out in Munster. So I think it is. I think it's huge for Waterford. I know what you're saying, Kieran, and that's a close defeat, but I think it's a big game for Waterford just to lay down a marker. That's if Limerick were to go out and steamroller them, it's you're so looking forward to the championship. It would just seem kind of flat going forward,
It's all to be revealed around 9 o'clock on Saturday night anyway, but I think there's some intriguing fixtures there, guys. I don't think Championship is done by a long shot anyway, and you have Kilkenny there and Galway, Wexford, Dublin there. May have a bit of a say come July. Guys, we'll leave it there. I'd like to thank Ruairi, Kieran and James for your time tonight. Great insights as always. And we'll come back next week and kind of review the action from round 2 of the provincials. And maybe if we have time, look at the underage stuff as well. We promised it this week, but I think time's got the better of us this week. Thanks again, guys.
Cheers, Mark.
Cheers, Mark.
Cheers, lads. See you now.
See you, lads.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.